Okay, so with percents, we had learned that it's basically how much something is out of 100. So remember, if I said that there was a test that had 20 questions and you got 18 of the 20 right, okay, the amount of knowledge you displayed, where if it was the same kind of test, the same kind of questions, but 100 of them, you'd see how many out of 100 it is. Okay? And we know in this case it would be 90. Okay, so the percents were kind of creating proportions, okay, equal ratios, where one of them is out of 100. And we know that we can make this into a decimal. Okay, so 90 100ths is the same as 0.90. It's a 90 100th or 9/10. They're the same thing. Okay. Now we also know that this decimal is very important when we're calculating percents. Okay, so let's say I have I don't know, 67. And I want to figure out what is 32% of 67. Okay. The first thing you need to do is make the percent a decimal. Make the percent a decimal. How am I going to make 32 into a decimal? How am I going to make 32 into a decimal? Austin? Yeah, because 32 actually has a decimal over here at the end of it. We move it over twice. Boom. So the decimal is going to be 0.32%. Okay, or sorry, not really 0.32%, just 0.32. That's the decimal form of 32%. Okay. Now, to figure out 67, what is 32% of 67? That of means we're always going to what? Alex? Multiply. So I'm going to multiply 67 times 0.32. 7 times 2 is 14. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 1 is 13. Put my 0 to hold its place. I'll cross this out because I don't need it anymore. 7 times 3 is 21. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 2 is 20. Now I'm going to add them up. 4 plus 0 is 4. 3 plus 1 is 4. 1 plus 0 is 1. Nothing plus 2 is 2. Well, I'm not done yet. I know that when I use multiplication problems that have decimals, I have to see how many places in all of the numbers a decimal is moved over. In this case, only one of our numbers, the 30.32, has a decimal, and it's moved over 2 times. So I come down to my answer, move it over 2 times, and I know that that is 21.44. That's my answer. Okay, so my step 1 was to make make the percent a decimal. What was my second step? What was my second step? Daniel. Yeah, that's how I made it a decimals. I moved it over 2 times. Good job. What do I do after that? Yeah, I multiply. Multiply the number by the decimal. Okay. Now one thing I can do is I'm going to see I have a 21 out of 21.44 out of 67. I can set that up as a ratio, or 2 ratios. Okay, I'm going to go 21.44 0.44 over 67. What does that equal as far as my percent ratio? What is that? What percent was I trying to find? 21.44 was what percent?
32 over 67.
Well, it was 32. You got one of them right, and that's perfect. We're missing one thing. It was 32 because it was 32%. 32 over what? 32 over what?
Over 100.
Over 100, that's right. Good job, Catherine. Because remember, 32% is just that number over 100. And that decimal, 32 hundredths, is this right here, isn't it? So this 21 divided by 67 is the same as 21.44 divided by 67 is the same as 32 divided by 100. Okay, those are proportions. The answer on both of them is going to be 0.32. 0.32. And you might think, well, do I really need to know that? This right here will help you solve a lot of problems with percents. It really will. And I'll show you right now how. Let's say we have the problem 18. Can you see that? Yeah, good. 18 is 22% of what number? Now you might think, well, aren't I just going to make that a decimal and multiply it by 18? Well, that's if I'm trying to find what is 22% of 18. I'm not trying to find 22% of 18. I'm trying to figure out, there's a number out there that when I multiply it by 0.22, I get 18. Ugh. How do I figure that out? I could divide it, yeah. I could. Okay, I could go 18 divided by, oops, sorry, that's wrong. I wrote my problem the wrong way. So let's get rid of that one. Ugh, even teachers make mistakes. You guys know that by now. 18 divided by 0.22, because that, what's that decimal? 0.22. And then I move the decimal over 1, 2. I put my zeros down and move it over 1, 2. And I can start solving this problem, right? I want to use ratios to solve the problem. Oh, actually, no, let's go ahead and solve this problem like this first, okay? So, let's see, 22 goes into 188 times. Because it doesn't go into 1, it doesn't go into 18. So let's try 8 times. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 2 is 16 plus 1 is 17. I subtract it, I get 4. And bring down the 0. 22 goes into 40 one time. After 22, that brings down into 18. And I bring down this 0. Wait, haven't we already seen 180? We have. It goes into 188 times. 8 times 22 is 176. Then that's where. So we're going to have a repeating decimal. Okay. So basically, if I look at 81, my answer is going to be 81.8. If I multiply 81.8 times that 0.22, I'm going to get 18. But there's another way I can solve that problem too. I can. Using ratios. Now I know that I have the number 18. And I know my percent. What's my percent is 22. So what ratio can I make with my percent. And Elise? 22 over 100. But do I know the big number yet? Do I know what I'm taking 22% of yet? So what am I going to put? X, a variable. Bam. Haven't I seen this before? How do I solve this kind of problem? What do I do to solve this kind of problem? Fernando?
Cross multiply.
Cross multiply. So I come right here. 22 times x is 22x. 18 times 100 is 1,800. And guess what happens when I divide? Oops, I need to divide both by 22. X equals 81.8181. It's a repeating decimal. So I'm just going to round it to this right here. They're the same numbers, aren't they? So I can use, when I don't have the number I'm starting with, so I have 18 is 22% of what number? I don't have the big number yet. I can divide by the decimal, or I can set them up into ratios. Okay, I can just set them up into ratios.